Alright, so to start making your grid, you're going to need a pencil, ruler, your image, and a blank piece of paper. These are both 6 inches by 6 inches. We're going to use our ruler, and mine does not have a 0 marking on the ruler. Yours might, but mine means that this end is my 0. So I'm going to line it up with the edge of the paper, and you will see that the 6 lines up with the edge here. So I'm going to make little tiny tick marks at every inch. And I'm actually going to do mine with black Sharpie so that you can see what I'm doing, but you need to use a pencil. So I'm going to continue to make my little tick marks at each inch because you are making a 1 inch by 1 inch grid. I'm going to do the same in the middle of my image. And I'll do the same at the other end. This will make sure that you make straight lines going across your paper for your grid. So now that I made my tick marks, I'm going to line my ruler up with all 3 tick marks. That way I know it's a perfectly straight line. Don't let your ruler move. Notice how I'm holding the ruler? I have my fingers spread across. If you're holding your paper this way, maybe you want to hold it like an L and press down. But if you're holding it over here, when you draw and make that line, your ruler is going to move very easily. And then you'll have to start over again and erase. And you definitely don't want to do that over and over again. So I'm going to hold my ruler with my fingers. Now since my ruler is going this way, I'm going to hold it like that L I was saying. And keep making your lines until you get to the end. There you go. Now we're going to do the same thing, but going in the other direction. I'm going to line my ruler up and make my tick marks at each inch. That's where the long line is, right next to the number. So make sure you're marking it on the long line and not one of the short lines. I'm going to do it again in the middle. And one more time at the other end. I'm going to line my ruler up and make those lines on my paper. And there you go. You have your gridded image. Now we're going to set that aside and we're going to grid our paper. Once again, you're going to grid with a pencil. I will grid with the Sharpie. When you are gridding on your blank piece of paper, you are doing this as lightly as you can with your pencil. Because when you're finished drawing, you don't want your pencil marks to remain on the paper. You want to erase them and pretend like you never even used a grid. So please make them very light. I'm going to line it up. I'm going to make my tick marks 3 times. And I'm going to line my ruler up with the tick marks and make a line going across my paper. Remember, hold the ruler nice and firmly in the center. Alright, and we're going to do the same thing, going in the other direction. And one last time. I'm going to line my ruler up. And there we go. The very last thing that you're going to need to do so that you don't get confused as you're drawing, make sure your image is facing the correct way. And we're going to mark the top squares very lightly and then these side squares very lightly with letters and numbers. So we will have this one, we're going to skip, and then we'll mark A. You can write yours much smaller and much less noticeable, so you can see the image underneath. But I am showing you what it's supposed to look like. And then going down this way, you're going to label it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That way, on here, you'll do the same exact thing. A, B, C, D, E, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, so that you know which square that you're working in. So if I start to draw my contour lines, I know that I'm looking at, if I'm going to start up here, I'm looking at the blank square, and I see that there's some shading, a different value change here. So I'm going to draw that in. I'm going to show my values later, but I can sketch in my lines right now for the contours before I begin to shade, just like you did on your other projects. So in A, my lighter value starts over here. I'm going to draw it down a little bit and then start to curve up. Now the trick is to make sure that you are only looking at one square at a time. Notice where the line meets on here. So I probably could have gone up a little bit more because it was about halfway marked on this paper. You can see that line meets about halfway on my grid line. So then I'm going to look in this square and I'm going to see where this begins and where it ends. It's a little bit higher than halfway. So I can make a little mark a little bit higher than halfway because it goes about there. Draw it a little darker for you. And I'm going to continue this line to go to this line. And I will keep doing that each square. If you get a little bit confused because you're looking at more than just the one square, you can use this tool called a viewfinder. And what it will do is you'll line it up on your paper and it'll help block out the other things around it. So if I'm looking at the square C, now I'm only seeing what's inside of C. So now I can see, okay, these dotted lines are halfway on my square, and C goes up at an arch and then stops over here. So on here, I can see, okay, it goes up at an arch and then stops about halfway, a little tiny bit higher. I'm drawing my lines very dark so you can see them. So you'll draw yours later. And then you can move on to the next one. So if this helps you out, this would be a great tool to use so you can see what's going on in each individual square. Do that a little too curved. There you go. And you can continue to use this, or you can continue to do it on your own without the viewfinder, whatever is more comfortable for you. When you're done drawing all the contour lines, you will begin doing the shading, and you want this to look identical as it can to this.